I also want to say a special word of appreciation to Julie Burns for our simultaneous Spanish interpretation that is taking place right now. And if you have someone in your life who is Spanish speaking and would benefit from our interpretation services, please let them know that every second week at the second service, our whole service is simultaneously interpreted in Spanish. Thank you, Julie. Our topic, as you heard from William, is service to the world. It's a message about you and me and what we bring into being in this world through how we serve it. So what does service to the world mean? Well, I think it's important to begin with the difference between doing a good deed and this idea of selfless service. Both are good. And yet one is a shift away in focus from the self in me toward the self in thee. Now, those who are already familiar with the idea of selfless service, they understand that the term selfless is a bit misleading. Because as soon as you start serving selflessly, you realize there's a reward in it, because both the person serving and the one served are being benefited and nurtured and blessed. It's a wonderful thing. A teacher was once asked, why is selfless service so effective? And the teacher responded, because most of our self is in others. That's big. That's important to get. That's the whole message. The self of me is the smallest part of me. Because the self is also in you, and you, and you, and you, and you. The largest part of the self is in thee. So I can say I'm a point of individual consciousness in the universal mind, which makes me part of something larger that, well, we call it the unity of all life. That's what I'm part of. I'm part of it all. And so when I focus exclusively on only one little point that I call me, I'm missing something. I'm missing a whole lot. The rest of it. I'm cutting out the splendid beauty of the rest of me that appears as you. And that potentially leads to a feeling of being disconnected, lonely, feelings of meaninglessness, all the things that plague our society. Perhaps because of where the focus is. Oh, it's good to work on personal happiness, but it's not enough. It's never been enough. It's never going to be enough. Because my personal life is only one part of this reality of me, and personal happiness will never lead to true happiness if the largest part of me is neglected. So when I don't take into consideration the well-being of others, I experience myself more and more as being separated, and it doesn't lead to happiness, and at least not in my experience. And I've often wondered, is it why people fill up their lives with activities, substances, religions, relationships? I wonder, are we trying to compensate for that feeling of, well, the lack we feel, the feeling of disconnect? Are we trying to compensate? Are we looking for the something that will join the dots and lead us back to the experience of wholeness that we long for, when all of the while it's right under our noses. It's right in how we care for and about each other. That is exactly what the secret of happiness is. I believe that it's very difficult for me personally to feel my wholeness when I ignore the several parts of me out there. In fact, I would say it's the most engaging, if not the most difficult teaching of our center. We are one. What am I going to do with that? Friends who are parents have told me that there comes this time in the phase, it's a phase in the development of their children where the child wants to separate from everything that has anything to do with the parent and the family. And it gets to this point when everything about the parent is just annoying. Even the love of the parent is off-putting. And they tell me that even when that happens, the parents keep on loving. Because their love is like the rays of the sun, indiscriminate, unconditional, unrestricted, uncompromising. It's just a gift that the parent cannot withhold even if they wanted to. A gift that they cannot withhold even if the child makes choices that the parent doesn't approve of. They tell me, these parents, that the reward is the loving itself. Not so much how it will be received or whether or not it will be acknowledged or appreciated. And that is exactly what selfless service is like. The reward is the service itself, and not so much how will it be received? Will it be liked? Will it be acknowledged? Selfless service is an attitude, the attitude towards life in which I understand that I am being supportive and nurturing and giving back to the life that is all around me because that is my nature. I am part of life and life is part of me, and that's what I do. And without the service, I can't feel my wholeness. Here are some qualities that help contribute to an attitude of selfless service. It helps to not seek acknowledgement. In other words, without drawing attention to myself and look what I did. It helps to do it as quietly as possible, without making a fuss. It helps doing the tasks that others are not willing to do or cannot do. That helps. It helps to do it without complaining. It helps doing those tasks which have been left undone or which other people cannot do. And it helps to do that without blaming. It helps doing what brings relief and doing it with empathy and not pity. Those are helpful. Our music director, Christopher Fritchie, I remember several years ago, he had his eye on a guitar, a new guitar that he wanted. I don't know what made this particular guitar so special. I think it was the brand name and the way it was it had features. Anyway, it was very expensive, so he really struggled with purchasing it, and several times he loaned it from the store and played, and eventually he took the plunge and he purchased this very expensive guitar. And somebody in our congregation noticed him and his struggle and the purchase and came and said to me, I want to give him a check for it, but I don't want him to know it's from me. Will you deliver the check? I said, yes, of course, I love that kind of job. I love that. So I gave the check to Chris, and so he never knew who gave it to him. And so he couldn't do anything about it. He just had to stew in it. He just had to be in the gratitude of accepting. And it made me think about all the people that we don't know who are contributing to ease in our lives. Right now, somebody, somewhere, is quietly doing something that is benefiting my life. I've been thinking about that. Who sweeps the floors of this sanctuary early in the week after everyone is gone? It's not a paid position. Who stays after everyone has gone home and picks up every piece of paper, mops up every spill, and finds every left behind item and puts everything back in its place? It's not a paid position. Who, before any guest arrives, takes out all of the parking cone and places it in all of the correct places along with all of the parking signs? It's not a paid position. Who is on duty in our nursery, watching over our infants? Who? It got me to think of all the people. Think about the people, not just in your center, but in your life, who quietly and kindly make a difference. So I feel a mantra coming on. I am part of life, and life is part of me, and I serve the world because it's my nature to do so. And without doing that, I can't feel my wholeness. I read an article about a religious convention, a group of people where students from all over the world in the thousands gathered to pay tribute to their teacher. And the local community that put on the event had to rent portable toilets, porta potties, to serve the event. And I don't know if you've ever had to use a porta potty at a street fair, but after a while it gets pretty interesting. But not at this event. You see, the organizers could have purchased professional cleaning services, but they didn't, because they saw an unprecedented opportunity for selfless service. And members of the community themselves, day and night, if you walked into that area, you would find them sometimes on their hands and knees, cleaning, washing, refreshing, scrubbing. And the author of this article I was reading said that arguably the bathrooms were the most clean spot in the entire endless acreage of this week-long event. And then the author of the article said, and do you know, there was no big sign saying, selfless service provided by. Nothing. Not a peep. Not a word. Nobody listed, no names, no identity. And that is selfless service. Selfless service is for its own sake. It is the reward. It completes the one serving. Selfless service has no outcome in mind because it doesn't know how it will turn out. Selfless service doesn't require acknowledgement or thank you or even a smile. Oh, it's very frustrating if you're in it for that. It's torturous, treacherous. Well, here is a helpful list of what selfless service is not. It isn't selfless service if your heart isn't in it, or if you think you don't really have to do your best. It isn't selfless service if it's for building your resume or to impress someone or to get ahead or to make business connections or to get known. It isn't selfless service if you need to tell others now or later that you did it. It isn't selfless service, if the lack of appreciation upsets you. It isn't selfless service if you think you have a right to do it, or if you have to fight with people to insist on doing it a certain way. It isn't selfless service if you hurt, annoy, bother, or bully other people when you're doing it. Well, what is a way to think about selfless service? I think this is it. Selfless service is how the divine works in this world through you. In the recommended reading for this month, the beautiful book, The Hope, Andrew Harvey calls it sacred activism. And in the book, he quotes the 16th century mystic Teresa of Avila with slightly adapted form to make it accessible to people of different faiths, like this. The divine has no body now on earth but yours. No hands but yours. No feet but yours. Yours are the eyes through which the divine's compassion looks out into the world. It's like our mantra. I am part of life. Life is part of me, and I serve the world because it is my nature to do so, and without it, I miss my sense of wholeness. Every now and then I receive a letter that makes an impression upon me that I cherish. And this particular letter that I'm going to read to you, I read it every time I am assigned the task of speaking about selfless service. I would like to take this opportunity, the writer says, to say thank you to all of those who have literally and figuratively held the door of this center open for me. I first came here about 20 years ago when it was just a little church on Orchard Street, and I was at a particularly challenging time in my life. When things got better for me, I stopped coming. But I always came back during the difficult times in my life, and the door was always open, and someone was always there to greet me with a smile. People made fabulous music for me over the years, and there was always a lovely environment with flowers. There was always a minister with words of inspiration, and someone to serve me a cup of coffee after the service and to pray for me when I put in a prayer request. I'm sorry to admit that I did not put a lot of thought into how all of this came together. And apart from being helpful in the youth ministry on the days when my son was there, and apart from making a token contribution in the offering, I did not feel moved to do anything to guarantee the continuity of the community. I took the center very much for granted, assuming that it would always be there. And indeed it was, like a lifeline during life's most challenging times. Things changed for me several years ago when I realized that I really wanted to be part of a community. And I knew that in order to do that, I needed to become involved in the activities of the center. So I took the Beyond Limits class, and I was particularly struck by the lesson on giving. And for the first time, my giving became something more than just a token. The major milestone came for me when I became a member of the center, and I realized that now it was my turn to hold the door open, literally and figuratively. So now I serve you coffee after service, and I do my part to pay the bills each month. For me, the move into membership has been a wonderful opportunity for me to give my time and my treasure, and I know I'm richly rewarded and blessed with a feeling of belonging, one I've never had before. I recently heard someone say that it had been suggested to him that he give not because others needed to receive, but because it was his nature to do so. I've been thinking about this, and have come to the conclusion that it is Spirit's nature to give through me. And I'm having fun thinking of creative ways to express this. I make it my joy to spread seeds of love and kindness every day. And I make it my business to contribute to the center as surely as I pay my utility and telephone bills every month. I'm in loving appreciation for all of those living and deceased who have contributed to my spiritual growth so that I may realize the nature of my true self. I want to keep that letter forever. And every time I read it, I'm reminded of that journey, how there are times when you and I might show up somewhere and we need to be served. All we can do is show up and receive. We may not be in a position to give. And then at some time when we are filled up and recovered, then service can be one of the ways where we give back what we have received. It's a way of circulating the good, keeping it in flow. It's a way of acknowledging your recovered wholeness. It's a way of building the future, as we heard in the letter, by participating in the present. And service has wonderful side effects too. It connects you to others. It gives others the opportunity to know you. It gives you the opportunity to know others. It creates that elusive and much desired thing, community. And when we begin to know each other, then it's easier and easier to care about each other. It becomes easier to know when somebody's missing or hurting, or when a child is born or someone dies. It's difficult to do that with fierce individualism. You know, our One Heart choir, that's so much more than a choir. It's a community of people actively experiencing their wholeness by caring for and about each other. They take care of each other. You know, when I think about people who serve selflessly, I notice characteristics. They frequently know how to listen without interrupting. They often are quick and easy to forgive. They tend to have strength of character. Little things don't derail them. They draw their personal value not from what they possess or what they do or what they accomplish, but from intangible values inside. And I've noticed that they tend to give more space than they take. People who know and are dedicated to selfless service are beautiful. The book of the month talks about selfless service as sacred activism. And it's all about meaningful engagement in the world. It's about the power of love to transform even the most difficult situations. And in the very beginning of the book, the author gives us 10 things that we can do right away to align ourselves with the power and the hope of sacred activism. And don't you know that the first 7 things are all about spiritual practice? Before you even get to do anything, the first is get clear on what you're grateful for. Get clear on what is holy and sacred to you. Find inspirational texts. Say a prayer. Meditate, and so on and so on. And then point number 7, he writes, strengthened by all of this prayer and this practice and inspiration, turn now to your life and the people in it. For everyone, especially in a time like ours, has friends who are grieving or ill, looking for a job, or in real financial difficulty. Commit now to calling one of them up and asking him or her what you could do to make the burden easier. And do this soon and be happy that you can. Isn't that something? I invite you to breathe in with me. Closing your eyes, exhaling into a moment of prayer where we acknowledge that source from which we all come, the ground of all being, the eternal mind of the Creator itself, the eternal living presence. And being created from it and by it, we say we are inheritors of its qualities, if such a thing can be said. So we say the unconditional love that is creation expressing is my heart and its capacity to love. And I dwell in that. We dwell in that together. I am part of life, and life is part of me. And I serve this world with my love because it is my nature to do so. And I am glad that it is so. And so I let this thought and this prayer stimulate me into right action and right thinking and into perfect love. I let this prayer dissolve all mental constructs of separation, and I sink into the certain knowledge that I am at home in this world, in the right place, in the unity of all life. This, my celebration, I use to close the prayer by saying with you, and so it is. Again, I invite you to breathe in and to sigh